The Greenwich real estate office looked like a nightmare version of itself. What had once been a sleek, professional space now resembled a scene from a horror film. Blood, dark and glistening, painted the walls in gruesome streaks, dripping slowly onto the cream-colored carpet below. The metallic smell hung heavy in the air, mixing with the faint scent of spilled wine and expensive perfume. Two women's bodies lay sprawled across the office floor in pools of crimson. The first, a stylish brunette in her 30s, was crumpled near her desk. Her designer blouse was torn, her manicured hands raised in a final, futile attempt to defend herself. A broken picture frame lay near her outstretched fingers. The glass shattered, the family photo inside now speckled with red droplets. Just a few feet away, the second victim, a blonde woman, had fallen near the doorway. Her body was twisted unnaturally, one high heel still on her foot while the other lay several yards away, as if she'd been trying to run when she was struck down. Her phone had skidded across the floor. The screen cracked but still lit up with an unfinished text message. The office itself told the story of the struggle. Chairs were overturned, their wheels still spinning slowly. Papers and files were scattered everywhere, some soaked through with blood. A wine glass lay in pieces near the reception desk, its contents forming a dark puddle on the hardwood floor. A potted plant had been knocked over, its soil spilling across an open planner that read Emily Price 2 p.m. showing in neat handwriting. In the midst of this carnage stood Daniel Price. His expensive suit was wrinkled and stained, dark splotches of blood marring the crisp white shirt beneath. His hands hung limply at his sides, fingers twitching occasionally. His breathing was eerily calm, his face expressionless as he stared at the scene before him. When the police arrived with guns drawn, he didn't resist. He simply turned toward them slowly, his movements mechanical, his eyes empty. The murder weapon, a pair of scissors, lay on the floor between the two women. The metal blades were bent and discolored, the plastic handles cracked from the force of the attacks. Nearby, a wall clock continued to tick steadily, its cheerful ticking sound horribly out of place in the silent aftermath of violence. As paramedics rushed in, their shoes leaving bloody footprints across the tile, Daniel remained still. He watched without reaction as they checked for pulses they wouldn't find. The only sign of life from him was the occasional blink of his eyes, the same eyes that had watched the life drain from his victims just minutes before. Daniel and Emily Price were Greenwich's couple to envy. Their immaculate six-bedroom colonial sat proudly on a tree-lined street where luxury cars never left the driveway dusty. Daniel's financial advisory clients included hedge fund managers, while Emily's real estate listings regularly topped $5 million. Their Instagram showed two beautiful daughters in coordinated outfits, weekend yacht trips, and date nights at Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. No one saw it coming. The change started subtly. Emily began visiting Salon Azure twice a week instead of her usual monthly trim. Just trying a new style, she'd say, running fingers through freshly highlighted hair that smelled of jasmine instead of her signature vanilla shampoo. Daniel noticed her phone lighting up with notifications from Azure APPT reminders at odd hours, 11:23 p.m., 6:17 a.m. The night everything unraveled, Emily left her phone charging in the kitchen while she showered. A text flashed on screen. Can't stop thinking about your hands in my hair today. 9 p.m. tomorrow? Daniel's fingers trembled as he scrolled up through weeks of increasingly intimate messages with Lauren, the salon's owner. Photos of Emily's new hairstyles were followed by heart emojis. Plans to stay late after closing piled up like evidence in a case he didn't know he was building. When Emily emerged from the shower, she found Daniel sitting perfectly still at the kitchen island, her phone placed neatly between them. The air smelled of her new jasmine conditioner, a scent he now realized wasn't meant for him at all. What destroys a perfect marriage? Was it the jasmine-scented betrayal in those damning texts? The late-night salon visits? Or the moment Daniel realized his wife's hair appointments had nothing to do with haircuts? The scissors were already in his briefcase when he stormed into her office. What would push a devoted husband to murder? Rage? Heartbreak? Or something darker? Comment where you're watching from and what you think set him off. The pre-dawn darkness of Greenwich clung to the streets as Daniel Price's alarm pierced the silence at 4:45 a.m. He moved through the motions without thought, the cold shock of the shower, the mechanical scrape of razor against stubble, the ritualistic tightening of his tie until the dimple sat perfectly centered. In the kitchen below, the espresso machine hissed to life precisely at 5:30 a.m., its bitter aroma mingling with the sterile lemon scent of their cleaning services products. Emily stirred when Daniel's weight left their king-sized bed, but didn't open her eyes. She'd learned years ago there was no point. By the time she descended the staircase in her silk robe, his breakfast 2-egg whites in a spotless porcelain cup sat untouched beside the financial reports he'd already marked up in red ink. "You're meeting the Adlers tonight?" Daniel asked without looking up, his finger tracing a line of stock figures. Emily paused mid-sip of her green tea. "It's Wednesday." A beat of silence. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked 3 times before Daniel's head jerked in a fractional nod. "Right? Pilates." Their daughter's laughter floated down from upstairs where the nanny was helping them dress for school. The sound should have warmed the cavernous kitchen, but it only made the space between Daniel and Emily feel wider. At Wellington Financial, Daniel's assistant knew better than to speak before his 3rd espresso. His glass-walled office overlooked the Long Island Sound, its surface rippling like the stock charts glowing across his dual monitors. Client portfolios never disappointed him. They followed predictable patterns, responded to logical adjustments. Unlike Emily, who'd started leaving her wedding ring in the cup holder of her Porsche. Across town, Emily scrolled through listings while her Starbucks cooled on the desk. The Lockwood estate was her white whale, a $15 million waterfront property that could make her year. She adjusted the collar of her blouse, fingers brushing the faint bruise hidden beneath her foundation. Lauren had gotten carried away last Thursday when the salon was empty. The memory sent an illicit thrill down her spine. "Emily?" Her assistant hovered in the doorway. "The Walkers are here for their appointment." Emily snapped into her performance. The warm smile, the effortless charm. She could sell a mansion without breaking stride, could recite square footage and school district rankings in her sleep. But when the Walkers mentioned needing a home with good energy, her mind wandered to the way Lauren's hands moved through her hair, how she'd whispered, "You deserve more than this last week." That evening, Daniel sat in his parked car outside their home, watching through the kitchen window as Emily helped the girls with homework. The scene looked like something from a catalog: the Sub-Zero refrigerator, the artfully arranged fruit bowl, his beautiful wife in her cashmere sweater. Perfect. His phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Annual portfolio review, 7 a.m. He dismissed it, then opened the banking app. The charge from the inn at Pound Ridge glared back at him, $287 on a Wednesday night when Emily had supposedly been at Pilates. Inside, Emily jumped when the front door slammed. Daniel's briefcase hit the marble counter with a thud that made the girls go quiet. "Long workout?" Daniel asked, his voice dangerously calm. Emily's hand went to her neckline. The class ran late. The lie hung between them, fragile as the Waterford crystal vase on the dining table. Daniel's fingers twitched toward his phone, toward the screenshot of the Uber receipt he'd saved. But the girls were watching, so he simply nodded and reached for a wine glass. "Of course," he said, pouring himself a generous measure of Bordeaux. "Whatever you say." The grandfather clock chimed 8 times as Emily turned back to their daughter's math homework, her shoulders tense beneath the soft wool. In the morning, she'd find the salon's number blocked on their shared phone plan. Daniel would discover his favorite tie missing from the closet. And so the game continued. The first time Lauren Chun touched Emily Price's hair, something unexpected happened. As the salon owner's fingers grazed the sensitive skin behind Emily's ear while adjusting the drape, Emily felt an electric jolt that made her grip the armrests of the styling chair. "Easy there, tiger," Lauren murmured, her breath warm against Emily's cheek as she leaned in to examine the ends of her blonde hair. "You'd think I was holding scissors to your throat." The joke landed with an intimacy that made Emily's pulse quicken. At 32, Lauren moved through her upscale salon with the confidence of a woman who knew her worth. Her jet-black pixie cut and tattooed forearms stood out among Greenwich's sea of blowouts and pearl necklaces. She'd built Salon Azure into a haven for wealthy women while quietly laughing at their suburban pretensions. Their sessions became longer each visit. What began as simple highlights evolved into elaborate styling lessons that required Lauren standing behind Emily, their bodies nearly touching as she demonstrated braiding techniques. The salon's vanilla-scented candles couldn't mask the tension thickening between them. One rainy April evening, Lauren canceled Emily's last appointment. "Stay," she said simply, locking the salon door as thunder rumbled outside. She poured 2 glasses of Pinot Noir and turned up Norah Jones on the sound system. When her fingers accidentally brushed Emily's collarbone while removing the styling cape, neither woman pretended it was an accident. The first kiss happened against the shampoo station, Lauren's hands still damp from rinsing Emily's hair. The taste of wine and mint gum mixed with the floral scent of conditioner as Emily found herself pulling Lauren closer by the belt loops of her distressed jeans. After that night, their affair developed its own rhythm. Emily would arrive for her weekly deep conditioning treatments, with a gym bag containing fresh lingerie. Lauren kept a private room upstairs with a locking door and silk sheets that smelled of jasmine. They communicated through coded messages in Emily's calendar. Route touch-up meant Lauren would be waiting at the back entrance after hours. The risk only heightened their passion. Emily once had to hide in a supply closet when Daniel unexpectedly called the salon looking for her. Another time, they nearly got caught when a client returned for a forgotten purse after closing. Lauren had pressed Emily against the mirrored wall. Her hand clamped over Emily's mouth to stifle her moans as the customer rattled the locked door. But the close calls weren't enough to make them stop. Emily began wearing Lauren's lipstick, a deep plum called Midnight Desire, and reapplying it before returning home. Lauren left love bites in places Daniel never looked. The inside of Emily's thigh, the small of her back. They developed signals for public encounters. 2 taps on a wine glass at charity events meant, "Meet me in the bathroom." The thrill of deception became its own addiction. Emily would sit through family dinners with Daniel, her body still humming from Lauren's touch hours earlier, pretending to listen as he discussed stock portfolios while imagining Lauren's teeth grazing her shoulder blades. Their last normal morning together started like any other. Daniel left before dawn as usual. Emily dropped the girls at school, then diverted to Salon Azure instead of the office. But when she went to delete their message thread as always, she forgot one crucial detail. The notification preview on her locked screen still showed Lauren's last message. "Can't wait to taste you again. 11 a.m. And in his car outside the salon, Daniel Price sat gripping his steering wheel, the screenshot already saved to his phone. Daniel noticed the changes in Emily one fractured piece at a time. It began with her perfume, vanilla replaced by something floral and unfamiliar. Then came the Thursday appointments that ran suspiciously late. Emily returning home with damp hair and a brightness in her eyes that hadn't been there in years. She'd hum while scrolling through her phone, her lips curving at messages she'd quickly swipe away when Daniel entered the room. First, he dismissed it. Emily had always been private. But then came the little betrayals. The way she angled her body when texting, shielding her screen from view. The sudden interest in girls' nights that never appeared on their shared calendar. The unfamiliar lingerie, black lace, not the practical cotton she usually wore. Peeking from the laundry. Daniel told himself he was being paranoid. They were happy, weren't they? But one night, as Emily laughed at something on her phone in bed, Daniel reached for her. Only for her to stiffen, then roll away with a murmured, "Not tonight." That was the moment the doubt took root. The truth came on a rainy Tuesday. Emily had left her iPad open on the kitchen counter, still logged into an email account Daniel didn't recognize. He told himself he was checking for a missing Amazon order. Then he saw the subject line. Last night was everything. His fingers moved before his brain could stop them. The emails unfolded like a horror story. "I can still feel your hands on me. Meet me at the usual place. I'll lock the door. He has no idea what you taste like." Attached were photos. Emily, bare-shouldered, her lips pressed to Lauren's neck. Daniel's vision tunneled. The kitchen, the rain, the sound of the nanny upstairs with the girls. All of it faded into white noise. He read them again and again. Then, with robotic precision, he forwarded every email to himself. Deleted the sent folder. Placed the iPad exactly where he'd found it. And poured himself a drink, his hands steady. Too steady. For weeks, Daniel played the dutiful husband. He booked a surprise weekend at the St. Regis. Emily canceled last minute, citing a client emergency. He suggested couples therapy. She laughed it off. He even tried to reignite their physical connection, only for Emily to recoil like his touch burned. Meanwhile, the emails kept coming. One night, after the girls were asleep, Daniel confronted her. "Who's Lauren?" Emily froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. Then, calmly, "My stylist." "Bullshit." The word hung between them, jagged and raw. Emily set down her glass. "What do you want me to say, Daniel?" No denial, no remorse, just cold resignation. That was the moment Daniel realized. She didn't care if he knew, and that broke him more than the affair itself. The real estate office was unusually quiet for a Thursday evening. Most of the staff had left by 7 p.m., but Emily's Mercedes remained in the parking lot, its windows fogged from the inside. Upstairs, in the private conference room, Emily and Natalie Chun were oblivious to the world. Natalie, Lauren's younger sister and the salon's newest stylist, traced her fingers along Emily's collarbone, her lips brushing the shell of Emily's ear. The bottle of Chardonnay on the table was half empty, its contents swirling in their glasses as Emily laughed at something Natalie whispered. "You're even more reckless than your sister," Emily murmured, her fingers tangling in Natalie's dark hair. Natalie smirked. "And you're even lonelier than I thought." They didn't hear the office door open downstairs. Daniel had known where to find her. For weeks, he'd tracked Emily's movements, her phone's location, her calendar updates, the excuses that piled up like evidence. Tonight, when she texted late showing, "Don't wait up," he checked the GPS. The office. Again. His hands didn't shake as he parked. His breath didn't hitch as he climbed the stairs. But when he saw them through the glass-walled conference room, Emily's head thrown back in laughter, Natalie's hands possessive on his wife's waist, something inside him snapped. The styling shears in his coat pocket felt heavier suddenly. Daniel didn't remember crossing the room. One moment he was standing in the doorway. The next, Natalie was gasping, her back slamming against the conference table as Daniel drove the shears into her throat. Blood sprayed in an arc across Emily's white blouse. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Natalie's hands fluttered to her neck, her mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. Then Emily screamed, a raw, guttural sound, and scrambled backward. Daniel yanked the shears free. Natalie collapsed, her body twitching as crimson pooled around her. Emily was on her feet now, her chair toppling behind her. "Daniel, please." He advanced. The second stab caught Emily in the shoulder. She cried out, stumbling into the wall of property listings, her fingers smearing blood across glossy photos of million-dollar homes. "You ruined us," Daniel hissed. Emily's eyes were wild with terror. "I'm sorry. I'll end it, I swear." The shears plunged into her chest. Once, twice. Emily slid to the floor, her breath bubbling red. Her hand reached weakly for her phone, still lit up with Natalie's last text. "Can't wait to see you." Daniel watched the light leave her eyes. Then he wiped the shears clean on his slacks. The 911 call came from a neighboring office. Screaming. So much blood. Police found Daniel sitting calmly in the lobby, his hands folded in his lap. The shears lay on the coffee table beside him, their blades gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Evening, officers," he said, as if they'd dropped by for a chat. The lead detective, a grizzled veteran named Ruiz, took in the scene. The bodies, the blood, the eerie stillness of the man before him. Jesus Christ. Daniel just smiled. At the station, he confessed without hesitation. "She didn't even fight for us," he told Ruiz, his voice eerily detached. "Not once." When asked about Natalie, he shrugged. "Collateral damage." The interrogation room's flickering light cast shadows across his face as he recounted the affair in chilling detail. The emails, the lies, the moment he realized Emily would never choose him. Ruiz leaned forward. And the scissors? Daniel's smile didn't reach his eyes. Poetic, don't you think? The courtroom was silent when the verdict was read. Daniel Price stood motionless as the judge sentenced him to life without parole. His expression as unreadable as it had been the night he took 2 lives. The gallery erupted in murmurs, but Daniel barely blinked. Only when the bailiffs led him away did his mask slip for a single, chilling moment. A faint smile, there and gone like a shadow. Outside, reporters swarmed Emily's family. Her mother, her face etched with grief, clutched her granddaughter's hands and said only, "No one wins today." The truth no one wanted to see. This wasn't just a story about an affair. It was about what happens when love curdles into possession, when silence becomes a weapon, when the pressure to appear perfect poisons what's real. Daniel didn't snap. He calcified, layer by layer, until all that remained was the cold certainty of his revenge. And Emily? She chose secrecy over honesty, passion over hard conversations, until the lies became a noose she never saw coming. Your turn. If this case made you rethink how relationships unravel, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you recognize these warning signs in your own life, the unspoken resentments, the bottled rage, the slow drift into isolation, seek help before silence turns deadly. What lesson will you take from this tragedy? Because the most dangerous lies aren't the ones we tell others. They're the ones we tell ourselves.